Welcome to Lead Your Life, the podcast for people who are seeking harmony in business and in life. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I'm an inner mastery and business mindset coach and the chief igniter here at The Lit Up Life. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what they value most. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity. It's a place, another land.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love to do without sacrificing what they value the most. Helping entrepreneurs look at their entire life and what they want their life to look like so that the business can become a conduit to that versus their life revolving around the business. So I am excited to be here with you today. We are following up on some concepts that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. Feel free, if you haven't listened, to go back and listen to that one, but they're also standalone, so you can continue to listen to this one. It just might have a little more context to it. And we were talking about like inspired action, inspired thoughts. And so I want to dig into now some of this, like what stops us from taking the action, that inspired action, in order to be the co-creators of our life, to be and act in the way that we want, to create the habits that we want. And so I talked briefly, and I want to share this again, around some very basic neuroscience. So if you think of your brain as a circle and you draw a line across that circle, the upper half of that circle is your conscious brain. So your conscious brain can accept messages, it can create and innovate, and it can deflect messages and say, no, I don't agree with that. That's not true, whatever the case would be. But in the deflection of that message, our subconscious can only accept messages. So what ends up happening is, even though we've said, no, I don't agree with that, it still goes into our subconscious brain. Now, there are all sorts of other messages that we get, and a lot of them are sublime. A lot of them are very subtle, that have been built into some systems even. And those interpretations of things then go into our subconscious mind and create a belief. And that belief then becomes kind of the box in which we show up in this world. And so then what happens is that belief creates then the actions that we take, and the actions create the habit. So if we want to change a habit, and I would propose that when we show up, even in ways that we're making decisions that we wish we would have done differently, or having any kind of regret or guilt or shame, there's a piece that's happening that we want to change. So in order to change that habit, we have to back engineer it and think about, okay, what are the actions that I'm doing that's creating that effect, basically, right? The habit. And then not only that, but then the actions lead into this idea of a belief. And so what is the belief that we have? And sometimes it helps to go back and figure out where the message might have come from, so that you can unhook that from your internal systems and change that viewpoint, or put on a different pair of glasses with that. But it's about uncovering what the belief is, and is that truly serving you? So the reason I talk about that is because as we think about the things that stop us and the ways that we can then change that, one of the things with aligned behavior is understanding our values, our moral compass, and also what inspires us. Like, I know that my inspiration comes from learning. Like, I'm super excited. My vibrational energy goes up when I'm inspired. I'm motivated. It helps me want to take the action, even though my brain, one part of my brain is telling me not to move forward because it wants to keep me safe. So in that effect, what happens is then that inspiration changes my vibration. It makes my vibration go up. And so when I'm vibrating at a higher level, I'm attracting those things at a higher level. So if you find yourself in a rut, you find yourself in this kind of feeling exhausted or burnt out, for me, that's a state of mind. And part of that state of mind is this idea of what's inspiring you, but also what is the messaging that we've received, right? And there's a whole lot more to that, and we can get into that in a different podcast. But it's then really about, when you think about the law of cause and effect, and I've talked about this before, this idea of we're always in cause. It just depends on what effect we want. So getting really crystal clear on what it is that you want and the why behind that, the inspiration behind that, then helps us make the decision differently in the moment when the decision needs to be made. I'm not going to lie to you. The last few weeks, I've had a lot happening in my life. And I've traveled some, and I've come back, and there's been days that I did not want to get up at 5 a.m. to study. I've given myself about a 30-minute window there to listen also to my body. And if I'm really tired, and I kind of felt like I was maybe fighting off a little something from my travel. And so getting up somewhere between that 5 and 5:30 time frame, thinking about the fact and thinking about the feeling, right? Like going to your heart space, and that's the inspiration. And what is the feeling I get after I study? I physically feel the vibrational energy go up, and my days are just completely different than when I don't go into study. And so, like I've given myself Sundays to sleep in a little bit, but what's interesting is the last week or so I've been thinking about, I might just have to get up and study on Sunday too. And, it's about doing some kind of learning. I'm reading a book right now, but I'm also in a conference or a mastermind. And so doing that on Saturday was my learning. So the point being is that it's finding that inspiration that then allows that change of vibration and thinking about how it makes you feel, because that is the piece that will then, it causes me to get out of bed, go down and get my coffee and get cozy and have the windows open to watch the sunrise and read. So, I am realizing too, I set an alarm for 7 a.m. and I need to set my phone further away, because I found myself the last couple of days picking up my phone to respond to some people or whatever. And I'm like, nope, that's not what this time is for. So it's interesting, right? Because our brain goes into this reaction mode, and it's about continuing to remember how it makes me feel. So like even this morning, I found myself doing a little bit of work, and I'm like, what am I doing? This isn't that. I want to feel that high vibration that I get from studying. And so it helped me put my phone down. So it just helps you in that moment when you're in that cycle. And think about a circle. When you're in that cycle, it helps you to stop and pause for a moment and change the behavior that you're wanting to change. Now, theoretically, this sounds really easy, but what ends up happening, and depending on where you go look, some people call it the monkey brain. I looked it up actually, and there's one place that has 3 different brains that are out there: the reptilian or lizard brain, the monkey brain, and I can't remember the other one, but anyway, it depends on where you go to look. But the point being is, there is a part of our brain that is the chatter, is the one that wants to keep us safe. And there are 2 kind of concepts that I teach on. And if you've listened for any amount of time, you've heard me talk about these before. But in relationship to this inspiration and making lasting change, it's important that when we look at this belief, the belief can be layered in your subconscious. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of things that could be, or that are layers in people's subconscious mind when it comes to stopping themselves and having that part of your brain take over that wants to keep you safe. And so therefore it doesn't want you to change. And what's interesting is the way our brain works is that when we go into that state, we start to look for messages or signs to prove our thoughts, right? Like And so if we think something's going to be scary and our brain is telling us to stop, it's going to find reasons. It's going to justify. And that's how you kind of know that you're in this brain, right? Like you're coming up with excuses, you're coming up with different things to stop yourself from doing what you want to do. So I call these two things loyalty packs and double binds. So I'm going to break this down for you a little bit. So the double bind is where you have something that you want. You have an effect that you want to go towards or that you'd like to have, right? With inspired action and inspired thought. So this effect that you're wanting to take place, you want to be able to take the action, but a double bind says, even if you have this one desire, you have this want that you have a deeper want or need that's stopping you from going to this other place. And these are a little bit darker than just kind of the surface of, oh, I just need to make up my mind. These are a little darker and sometimes really subconscious, and it takes some time. It takes having a coach help you with these things. And what it's really about is this double bind is where I'll give you an example. I've talked about this example before, how I wanted to step into my business sooner than what I did. I don't beat myself up about it, but what I realized is I had a message in my brain because my mother and father owned a True Value hardware store in Platte City, Missouri. And my mom ran the store. My dad was in corporate and was getting ready to retire. And my mom got breast cancer. We don't really have, my great grandmother had breast cancer, but she was past the age that they actually count it. But we didn't really have breast cancer in our family. So she swore, and at the time, the hormones were much different back then, that the hormones she took for menopause and the stress of owning her own business is what caused the breast cancer. So I couldn't figure out, like, why am I stopping? And there's numerous things, right? It wasn't just one thing, but this is one example. And so my business coach helped me unpack this to see that that message that I heard her say was deep in my subconscious brain. So therefore, the part of my brain that wants to keep me safe literally was thinking it was going to die if I stepped into my business full time. And so once I had that self-awareness, then I could see where there was untruths in there, right? That was her story. It's not my story. So it allowed me then to step in, realizing that was holding me back. I could then let go of that, right? But until we become aware, it's hard to let go of those things. So another example of a double bind, well, let me back up, because my desire was to have this business, but the stronger desire for me was to stay alive, right? In the subconscious brain. So even it was funny today, I saw something out on social media about this Rattlesnake Skydiving is the name of the company. And back in 2020, I found myself doing something that not only did I say no, I said, hell no, would I ever do? And what was interesting about it, and this is a double bind, kind of a different type of look at a double bind. So for years, I said, there's no way I would jump out of an airplane. There's no way I would skydive. Like, I'm not a real fan of heights, being up high. But it's interesting, the more and more I unwind double binds and loyalty packs and unwind these messages and these beliefs in my head and in my mind, the less I'm afraid. And so anyway, I had just gone through a pretty major life thing. I'd been together with my then husband for almost 30 years. And I decided that I wanted to jump out of an airplane. So the desire changed for me. The desire was to step into something that meant something to me. It was like my act of freedom, right? Like jumping out of that plane and being free and trusting the experts to help me land safely. right? And so an example of a double bind there was I said no because of my fear of heights, that I would never be able to do that, that I would die, that I would hurt myself. And relinquishing that, and I'm not saying that it's not, there's not dangers to it, there definitely are, but the desire for me to have this like act of freedom and feel this like almost like a threshold that I was crossing over was stronger for me than my fear of heights. Now, I'm trying to use the same concept with my fear of snakes. I'm not a big snake lover. You can ask my best friend. I won't walk a certain trail here. And if I hear one more time from someone, oh, they're just little itty bitty garter snakes, it doesn't matter to me. So it's a little counterproductive for me to walk that trail because my blood pressure and my heart races in a way that's not necessarily what I'm wanting to get out of that, right? So the point being is I'm trying to utilize some of that same technique around even a fear of snakes. So sometimes if you're afraid of something and you're afraid, you can start to unwind and figure out what is the double bind that I might have. What is the stronger desire that's creating the fear? So there's kind of two ways to look at double binds in that way. Another example of a double bind is I see this happen a lot, and this is very subliminal. And what happens is like people in your family, your siblings, your parents, they may have owned a business, they may have been in corporate, and there's kind of different things with that. If people have been in corporate, there's this thought process that, and I was in corporate for 20 years. So there is kind of a thought process that why would you want to own your own business, right? Like you can't do it without corporate. So there's that kind of double bind, but then also there's double binds, and this is what I see happen a lot, where maybe their parents were successful in something or their siblings are doing work. And I fall into this sometimes. My sisters both have super important jobs. My youngest sister raising my nephew and does marketing and all sorts of like cool stuff that she does. And then my other sister is a nurse and like literally saves people's lives. And so I look at what they do and I have so much respect for that. But I know in my heart, I couldn't go back to like I could if I had to, right? But like that desire for me to go back to working for someone else is not there. Where now my desire is to stay as an entrepreneur and do what I can to make the impact in the world and have big, hairy, audacious goals. And the thought of now going back to something that I never thought I would leave is interesting. And I see where the double bind was now. And part of that double bind, getting back to where I was going with this, is twofold. One is that sometimes people are afraid to be more successful than other people that they're around, whether it be their friends, their family, whatever the case would be, because there's this fear that we'll be kicked out of the tribe, that we won't be relevant, whatever that is, right? And that's in our minds. The other piece of that, when we talk about double binds, is also our relationship to money. And fear of money will a lot of times stop people in their tracks from stepping out into an entrepreneurship situation. And let's face it, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Like I want you to hear me with that. But what I'm really talking about is like these double binds that come in for us. So that's kind of a different way to look at double binds than maybe I've talked about in the past, particularly with as a desire changes. So if you find yourself like you have a desire, whether it's a New Year's resolution or you have a goal, something that you really want, and you don't understand why you're not taking the inspired actions to change something, it's usually because we're not inspired because there's a different desire that is stronger than the one that we say we want. And again, it's very subconscious. And I've found I always need people to help me kind of uncover that. Now, sometimes it's going to a conference, sometimes it's listening to a podcast, sometimes it's working with a coach or my mastermind, because it gives me a different perspective that then allows me to see the double bind. Now, the other part of this is a loyalty pact, very similar, because it stops us and we have a message, particularly around those that we love. And The loyalty pact is around the fact that we don't want to either look better than someone else, be more successful than someone else, or make particularly those that we love wrong. So, like I had talked to someone one time about starting a business. This person started a business and then actually went back to a W-2 job, which is perfectly fine. No judgment there at all. But what was interesting is I knew the desire was so strong there, but it was hard for her because her parents had been entrepreneurs and struggled financially. And so, in a way, she didn't want to start this business and be successful and be more successful than her parents, because in your subconscious, then you're making your parents wrong, or those people that you see as parental figures. It could be mentors, whatever the case would be. So I see a lot of times these loyalty pacts come up with family. And it's really, I think about my family and I think about going into this work that I've gone into and feeling the support from my sisters and feeling the support from my son and daughter-in-law and my friends. And then what I find is I also get into situations where I want to take inspired action and I don't, right? Like that's another way to look at this, is if you know what the inspired action is and you don't, that's another way to say, ooh, I'm in some kind of chatter in my brain. What do I have a loyalty pact with someone? Do I have a double bind or a different desire that I'm just not quite aware of? And I find myself even sometimes struggling with doing behaviors a little bit differently based on what would be considered codependence behaviors, but like wondering, what's that person going to think about me, right? Or will I lose them as a friend? Will I lose them as my family member? Because our brain is in this chatter trying to keep us safe. And whenever we go into that, it's about uncovering what's the untruth. Because there's usually, when there's chaos and confusion, there's an untruth in there. And it's about unwinding that and really making the decision and seeing what the truth is for you. So those loyalty pacts, those double binds, they create in us this thought pattern that we can't go forward. So when we come back from the break, I'm going to give you a few examples before we close out. Let's face it, sometimes as an entrepreneur and a business leader, we need some guidance, support, and community. So we here at The Lit Up Life have 3 ways that you can work with us in order to achieve that. As a private client, we work together to quantum leap your business by discovering strategies to help you move past what's holding you back and allow you to identify what you want your life to look like. The result, your business becomes the conduit to the lifestyle, success, and impact that you intend. Now, I'm a huge believer in the power of collaboration. So in our community masterminds, you can join in with other high vibrational business owners who want to level up, increase impact, and financial gain, all with a tribe of other women to support and encourage you on your journey. Currently, we're accepting application for this women's mastermind group, which is a year-long program for women in business who are ready for that next level of success. We create deep personal awareness in a safe and supportive space where you can experience growth with others who are on that same path. Through weekly sessions with our program coaches, teachings that go beyond the buzzwords, and immersive retreats in places like Mexico, the Dominican Republic, or Belize, we work together to create long-term abundance and lasting impact in your life and business. The last and final way to get involved with us is our group coaching programs. They provide the opportunity for teaching, masterminding, and feeling like you aren't alone on this ride. Come join us. Okay, welcome back. So how can you go about letting go of or releasing some of these, and I think about them as chains, releasing some of these double binds or these loyalty pacts. And it's interesting because I was in Santa Monica last fall and there's this sculpture that's this tree that is made out of all these chains, all these chain links. And I think about how we create these visions in our mind of something based on all of these chains. And so how do you unlock those chains? There's a couple of ways. First of all, ask yourself if there's something you're wanting to do, really sit down. And I will say change only happens as much as we're willing to see the truth. Sometimes we can't see the heart of the truth, but about looking at the fact that the brain, like our gray matter, is just the vessel. When we die, our gray matter is still there. Our mind is connected to our brain, to our hearts, to our souls, and to our bodies. So sometimes our bodies can tell us if you have an ache and a pain, or you have something happening within your body. Louise Hay is a great resource. I use her You Can Heal Your Body book a lot, and it can give you some insight into maybe some things that you're kind of going through internally. So try to stop and listen to your body. Secondly, really look at without judgment. So look at these things through the lens of curiosity. You've heard me say that a million times if you've listened at all to any of my podcasts. So look through the lens of curiosity and notice the linguistic environment. Notice the words you're using to describe something. Then talk to a trusted person that will push you. I don't mean go to your friends or family or the person that you're nervous about it being a loyalty pact with, because part of it is our brain is seeking affirmation to keep us safe. So like, I know I have some business women in my life that will ask me the tough questions to get me to start seeing things a little bit differently. They're not telling me what to do, but they're asking me those questions. So surround yourself with some people like that. Second or thirdly, hire a coach. I mean, I'm not trying to just sell me. Like, I don't care if it's me or someone else, but hire someone, because sometimes we're too close to the situation to see it. One of my mentors says, sometimes if you stand in your own shit long enough, it stops smelling. And that's so true, because it becomes a norm, right? It becomes in your mind just how it is. So those are kind of 3 actions that you can take right away, and just start noticing when you're trying to, like, as an example, when I'm making the decision in the morning that my alarm clock went off, whether or not to hit snooze or whether or not to get up and read, I notice, am I doing this like, am I just hitting snooze because I've created a habit with that? Or, let me ask a question. How do I want to feel today? And that question then gets me up and gets me moving. So that was a whole lot of things that I just unpacked. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following. If you have any questions, you want to talk more about this for yourself, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Just check out the show notes and it will show where you can get in touch with us. We also have just started a women's entrepreneur community called Build Her. And you can go out to my website. It's found in the show notes. And there's a button that you can push on to say, join the community. So I'd love to have you. And with that, it's a wrap. Everybody have a fantastic day, and we'll see you next week. That's a wrap for this conversation. I'm so glad you've joined us. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you can catch all of our future episodes, and visit us at thelituplife.com for details on how you can become part of the Lit Up Life community. A quick shout out to my friend Jackie Wilson and her friends, the creators of our amazing theme music. Thanks so much for allowing us to share this perfect song with our listeners. Looking forward to having you listen in to our next episode.